pretty excited about this week's podcast. With me, Scott Alloway, the man who thought he'd ring up an Australian company and go, can you build us a bobsled suit? How are you, mate?
I'm really, really good. Really great to be here. Good to catch up again, mate.
It is. Let's rip in.
Welcome to the Body Science Podcast. As always, the information contained in this podcast is for the information purposes only and is not designed to diagnose or be prescriptive to treat, prevent or manage any injury, disease or other health-related condition.
Welcome to Body Science HQ, the world of fit, happy, healthy. And with me is Scott Alloway, were you the commercial director or what was your position at Great Britain Bobsleigh back then?
Well, I was... prior to us actually, I was commercial director, but previous to that, I'd been an athlete for a number of years, and then made the transition over once I was too old to compete anymore.
Oh, that never stops, does it? Always once
competitive.
No,
in my head, every year I'm planning a comeback. Don't worry about that.
So, mate, let's rip straight in before we chat about you and stuff. I want to talk a bit about body science, if that's cool with you. Why would someone who is, and am I correct in saying running an Olympic program? Like that's the whole concept here. Yeah. Come to us and say, hey, will you guys build us a bobsled suit? Because I'm going to tell people my response to you after you tell me that. Like, we still piss ourselves laughing about it, but yeah.
It's I guess it's like asking a Saudi to build an igloo, isn't it? It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, does it? No, I tell you what, if I wind back to, when I was competing, it was probably a time where in the annals of the history of the sport, we'd probably all rather forget. And it was mainly made up, the sport was made up of athletes from other sports, as it always is from bobsleigh. But I was, the time I was working in London, I had a full-time job around a company there, and I was training part-time, and part-time athletes give part-time results, and if you look at, it's sport in the UK, if you're an Olympic sport, which we were, and you have medal-winning potential, then you get UK sport funding. I guess it's similar to like the Australian Institute of Sport, exactly. How they fund sports, and we were so far away from that. So we had no money, we had nothing, and I remember, when I got selected to compete, I was really, really excited, because what you see on TV, the sleds, everything, it all looks pretty slick.
It's an epic sport.
Yeah, it looks great, but behind the scenes, it was a total shambles. We were all self-funded athletes. Things like the equipment was bad, and even down to the race suits. Each in a four-man sled there were 4 race suits. Now it didn't matter if I'm not a big athlete. I'm probably 5'10" in my high heels. But if the guy before me was 6'4" and 20 kilos, it didn't matter. They were just and actually sometimes they didn't even wash them in between races, and it was pretty horrific. And you can't help notice, as I was a little bit older, I was in my 30s, and I'd been working in, and you just look at this and go, we could do so much better than this. And so after I finished in 2010, I joined the board of directors as commercial director, because to be able to compete, you need things, particularly if you're not being funded by UK sport. So I basically looked at everything that we needed. The first thing we needed was money. And then bobsleigh is a really, really, really expensive sport. It's like a traveling roadshow for 6 months. So we leave in a number of vans, could be up to 10 vans. We travel over to Europe, then we go to North America, where then we have to hire more vehicles. So it sort of runs on a 3-month cycle, 3 months in Europe, then 3 months in North America. We need cars, we need race suits, we need helmets, we need all sorts of preparation materials, and we had so little. We didn't have anything really. The helmets we were using had been on the shelf for 6 years. It was all pretty horrific. And so when I sort of changed over to being a board director, we took on a guy as our performance director called Gary Anderson, who I didn't know, but fortunately lived quite local to me. He was only 15 miles down the road, and I met him at there's a running track where I trained at not far from me, and we had a meeting one evening, and it was only supposed to be a 30-minute meeting, and we were still there 3 hours later. You know, it was a real meeting of minds. He was a really interesting guy, really grumpy though. But I quite liked him. You know, like he was just sort of but he got things. You know, he was a real doer. He got things done, and we just sort of sketched out. He goes, well, you know, what do you need to be able to compete? And so I listed out the things I just said. You know, vehicles, you know, helmets, race suits, money. And he goes, well, how much of that have we got at the moment? I said, well, none of it. You know, we haven't got anything. And he goes, well, okay, well, let's not just settle for getting stuff. You know, what we have to do, the mentality of the sport is whatever you do and whatever you get has to make the sled go faster, right? Because if we're 2010 now, and let's say the ambition by 2014, and this is the ambition, he said, or I'm not going to join, you know, I'm not going to stay in the sport, is we want to win an Olympic medal, right? Yep. So we're no hopers at the moment. So then we just sort of started listing out all the suppliers we really wanted to work with. Now, there's another guy who I think you guys spoke to from time to time, Chris Woolley, who was also an athlete at the time, had just also crossed over. He was one of these guys who had made himself into the Superman version of himself. So if you look at him as a basic athlete, he probably wasn't that suited to bobsleigh. He wasn't quite big enough, but he'd taken his numbers from average to fantastic, but they were as good as he could ever be. And the guy also has got like degree in biomechanics, sports science. So he basically made himself. So we said, look, what you've done to yourself, you have to accept the fact that, you know, it's he's pound for pound, you're the best athlete we have, but it's not a pound for pound sport, right? You know, we need big. So he said, if you can take what you've done and then start instilling that into all the athletes we bring on board, will be fantastic. That would be great. So designing all their strength and conditioning programs and running all the sessions. But also he said, then we were talking to him. So, you know, let's talk about the race suits. And he just said, look, there's one company, and he was always wearing BSC stuff.
Was he really?
You know, yeah. I mean, he's a strange man, you know, but a great guy, you know. And he just said, look, of all the stuff I've tried out, he said, because firstly we need to move away from just basic Lycra, which is all these other race suits were, and they were all made by Adidas. Every race suit for every nation was Adidas. It was just cheap Lycra. He said we need to move into compression, and I said, well, why? And then he was talking about the recovery, the injury prevention, you know, the performance gains that we got for it. And he goes, so there's one company, you know, we need to work with is BSC. So get in touch with them. And then there it was. I thought, well, okay, I'll ring an Australian company that they'll be up for this. Thinking it'd be a short conversation, and it ended up being we got in contact, and then I couldn't believe that you guys would be crazy enough to do it. But I loved it was immediate. Goes, well, we love the sound of this. This is different. This is a challenge, and you know we'd spoken about the ambition of to become Olympic medal winners, and yeah, it was just the fantastic response that went to working together for the 4 years that we did.
Mate, I actually recall that phone call. It's one of my funny stories I tell when I have a few beers. I remember saying, because I knew nothing about bobsled apart from probably watching a Jamaican bobsled movie, which everybody obviously mentions to you when you say what you do.
Cool Runnings.
Exactly. Yeah. And I remember saying to you, okay, the CFO is probably not going to love this idea. So, mate, how big's the sport? And you're thinking that it's like, I don't know, rugby league where there's a bobsled team in every city. And I remember you said to me, nah, there's it's only hosted in one spot. And I've gone, okay, cool. And I'm thinking over here, touch football, a touch football will have up to 200 teams under an all age group. I thought, so how many teams are we talking for these suits? And you've gone, 2, men's and women.
Men's and women.
And I've gone, okay, so we're going to make a specific bobsled suit, and there's 12 athletes, was it?
Well, it's for initially, yeah, but obviously the program ended up being a lot bigger than that.
But we made heaps in the end, but yeah, it was.
Yeah.
So I had to go to the board here with Nathan and Sheree and go, hey, I got this really great idea. You know, we can be involved in a great sport, and it's all down the line. You know, we love our compression, and let's push ourselves. And by the way, there's no sales, and we're going to make 12 suits. And and by the way, we've never seen one. We have no idea what we're actually saying yes to, because I remember you saying to me, I'll send one over. And I've gone, no, don't do that, because the team will just go, oh, look at it and go, you've explained to me why you want to get out of that suit. I can present that to the team. And to date, the only bobsled suit we've all seen is the one we made. We still haven't actually seen a traditional bobsled suit. So it was, But I remember like working with Sal and working with Sheepy, and yourself on the prototype and what you wanted from it. It was really interesting back then for our team to take what we'd learned from compression and put it into, like, firstly, connecting a bottom and a top suit might sound simple, like you sew it together, but it's not, because you've got some videos of people that had bobsled suits that didn't quite fit properly. There's a lot of torn bums. Yeah. It was a really fun time for us to work with you guys in that space, and it still sits in the boardroom. I managed to keep one, and you were very kind to send me over a helmet that went with it. So we have a mannequin sitting in our boardroom with both of them on.
Fantastic.
Every now and then one of the staff members puts it on and walks through the factory, and I go, get that fucking thing off. It's a one-off. It's probably the only one left. Can you put it back? And by the way, that helmet cost a lot more money than you think it did.
Yeah, we got I've got a few of the prototypes still, and if anybody rocks up to a fancy dress party not in fancy dress, you know what they end up as. So.
Mate, the suit I like. It was great doing the national suit, or if that's the right word to use. But that black one, the black one we did, and I remember one of your major sponsors, was it Philips? One of your major sponsors? I think Volvo, wasn't it? Volvo, yeah. And I remember we had to make them for Volvo. They loved it that much. We had to make them suits as well. And it was a really. There's so many fun relationships in sport, and so many relationships that, you know, if you sat back and said I had to write a book, you know, this would be a chapter, because it was such a cool part in time to deal with you, and the passion from you for the sport back then. I had no idea. Like, I just heard your history leading into it. I had no idea. I thought it was like you think of UK sport, you think of football and all those things, which are so cashed up. And for you to say that, you know, we're wearing old this and old that and 6-year-old helmets, gives me even more joy to what happened back then, because it was well, and the thing is as well, you know, there was as an athlete, you know, when you're the whole teamship thing and the whole performance thing moves on from, so you rock up and you get that stuff. It just doesn't make you. It's not going to make you want to perform, or you know, it certainly doesn't sit in the plus box. And that was one of the things, you know, we, particularly Gary was really Gary Anderson, the performance director, was, look, you know, if you want athletes to perform like athletes, they've got to look like them. They've got to feel like Absolutely.
It. And you know, and I remember when the excitement when the first prototype suit came over, and Chris and I tested it out, and we said, there's something magical about it, you know, because it was different, and I like different as well. Different on its own can be a great motivator rather than just and so we tested it out, and then we sent it back and said, right, okay, there was a few modifications we had to make on it, and then I think pretty much off that, the race suit, that the first suits that we got were ready to go, and I remember and the other thing, sitting down with the athletes and saying, right, you know, the idea is now that each of you will have 2 of your own race suits made to measure in your size. You know, they looked at me like a discovered fire or something. You know, it was really, 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 you know, the reaction. But then it was a bit like, you know, eyes rolling on another board member, you know, promising stuff they won't deliver. And I said, well, here's the first prototype, and it was like, you know, like in Pulp Fiction when he opens the suitcase and the orange light comes out. They're like, wow, you know, this is different. And then, you know, when the first batch came over, and the athletes were, you know, delighted. You know, they put them on, and I said, well, who am I sharing this with? And said, no, this is your suit, and then, you know, this is your second suit. You know, so if you're going between, sometimes you might have races back to back. So you go to Austria Eagles for Innsbruck for one race, and then you might be off to Germany the next week. You might not always have a chance to wash your race suit in between, because you jump in after the race is done, you're pretty much packed and go. You might be able to wash it when you get to, but maybe you wouldn't. And it was just like, or, you know, you might get into a bit of a crash and maybe damage the race suit. So, well, you know, we don't want damaged race suits on or you know, on TV and stuff like that. And again, we think about, you know, we want you guys to look the business, and then also at the same time, you know, those helmets that you got, you know, they were via KBC, and they fitted in with the, you know, we even took the blue color that you guys were using and made sure it matched the helmet, you know, and unreal. And they're still coveted now, those helmets now, because KBC did a limited production run paint job that was all of that, and it just lifted everybody. But then also was the, you know, how different they were compared to the old race suits. when the athlete put them on, like the muscle support. And we found things like injury levels were dropping, because you have to remember, like, it's a freezing cold environment and it's a high explosive sport. And, sometimes there might be a delay before the start. Your sled goes on and there might be a crash. So you're waiting, it's cold. It's a recipe for injury. And we found things like, that the athletes were getting injured less. And it was just, but I really like the best thing, or one of the best things, was the reaction from the other nations. So we rocked up because we're, Germans. Well, where's your Adidas? And we're like, and they're all. You could almost, we had to almost protect them in the changing rooms because we thought they might try and pinch one. And just seeing their reaction. And at the same time was this rise. That everything started. Because we managed to get some money together. We managed to have a funded year because we got so much great support from the other some of the other sponsors. So like we managed to do a deal with Volvo for cars. We got Hendy Hire, who were only supporting one athlete, Paula Walker, and she was great enough to let us go, well, what, you talk to them, see what you can do for the whole team. So then we had all the vans, so we weren't spending any money. Yeah. And by the way, money we didn't have. And then we did a deal with LV Insurance via their Britannica arm for some cash. Not a lot, but it got us going. And so that was sort of 20, and then in the 2011, so 2010, 2011, so almost straight away, I don't know if you remember, but Paula won the World Junior Championships. So she was World Junior Champion, and that opened the door to UK sport funding. So they gave us a little bit after that, and that we made that little bit go a long way. And then suddenly, we were able to recruit better athletes because we could offer them, not an embarrassment and a shambles, but we looked the part, and then we could get them, we could pay for their expenses and maybe a little side money as well. And then after that, we started with John Jackson. We recruited 3 really, really good athletes. I mean, we had Joel Fearon, who joined us, he's a 996 guy for the 100. He's like the 4th fastest guy in history. He wasn't at the time, but he had that potential. And we got Bruce Tasker, who was the Welsh 400 meter champion, but big guy, phenomenal athlete, and Stu Benson. And they just gelled behind John. And then we started to get good results. Yeah. And then that after 2012, so we had a 2.5 years to the Olympics, we got full UK sport funding, which was for quite a few million, and it was just, and I just remember, sitting down with Gary thinking, we've had a mad 2 years. And I remember, to just give you, an idea on numbers. So when I first became commercial director, I got really busy, and the reaction from yourselves was similar to a few of the others, because we had the story, the journey is we want to finish with an Olympic medal in 2014. Did I believe it? I thought, well, probably not, but I thought, if we shoot really, really high, we might come 9th or something, which would be a big improvement. But actually it created a bit of momentum. But after about 3.5 months in the job, we got invited to the British Olympic Association, the BOA in London, to talk about sponsorship. I mean, they had no idea what I'd been up to, and it was really, so it was all the 7 winter Olympic sports, and it was really to give us a bollocking, because we none of the sports were really doing anything. And I'm sat in this room with guys from skiing and all the other, the biathlon and bits and bobs, and they're going, so look, during your Olympic quad between 2006 and 2010, all 4 of your sports, he said, you've submitted all your sponsorship, raised £60,000 between you in cash and value in kind, so like races, So I'm like, really? So I kind of stuck my hand up, and they were like, I'm from Bobsleigh. I took over about 3.5 months ago. So I've had a little bit of joy, and they said, well, tell us about it. What are you up to there? I said about 350,000 quid. And they were like, you what, man? So I got casted off to a different room then, to check to see I wasn't making it up, and they said, so what have you been doing? differently. I said, well, the thing is, I said, there's this acceptance in winter sport in the UK because we're not an alpine nation. It's people get interested in it during the Olympics, because it's not a participation sport. If you look at why does everyone love Formula One? Not everybody, but why does Formula One have a big following? Because everyone drives a car, or people played football when they were kids, or so there's no connection with winter sport because we can't do it in this country. And they were just saying, so what have you done? I said, well, the thing is, I said, there's an acceptance amongst the winter sports that it's just the way it is. No one's interested, and so they don't even try. They'll put some stuff up on their website, and they might send out a email out occasionally to somebody, but they just sit there with their hands out, and wonder why they don't get anything. And I said, look, I talked them through exactly the process. I sat down with Gary Anderson and we'd listed out, the ideal people we'd like to work with or what we needed to get going. And then I just did what I did with you guys. You pick up the phone.
Absolutely.
Because
it's a novel idea, isn't it?
how else do you have a relationship with anybody if you're not talking to them?
Yep.
And also, I took the point of view that no one's going to wake up in the morning and think, I think I'll sponsor the British Bobsleigh team today. It's just not going to happen, is it? But actually, if you're stuck at work and you get a call from the British Bobsleigh team, you think, well, this could be interesting. Everyone's seen cool runnings. I mean, what's the worst thing that could happen?
Yep.
And then it just went from there. I mean, there was a lot of phone calls, and there was a lot of, well, we might be interested, but that's just life, isn't it? But what, the one thing you do know, if you do nothing will happen. But actually the reaction was fantastic from lots of people. But you guys were the first people that I rang. So I was off to a good start. And actually like all things, it's like, Greg, you run a business, is momentum, isn't it? You build that momentum and you get a bit of success. I think if I'd started with all the phone calls that were all the no's, it might have been different. But it was it was fantastic. It was amazing time. And I was lucky also being a former athlete or literally just retired athlete that had that little bit of credibility as well about it. I wasn't a marketing agent ringing up on behalf of. I think
that's how you let in, actually, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
I'm not a marketing person. Just I want to.
I've got a dream. It's this is it, and I need some help. You put dream and help together. Most people are interested, and that at least will listen. And then you've got to put it together. And also, I mean, Gary was great because he'd put some structure around it. He'd been done very well in some other sports, and he just put a structure around it and made it feel like it was probably more substantial than it actually was. It was fantastic, and so we got the momentum, and then the results started to come, and that was they're the two things. You hope it will happen, and if you do all the right things and you do enough of them, you hope you'll get the results off the back of it. But it doesn't always work but you have to do the right thing, and it just went from there. I think Paula winning the World Junior Championships in 2011 was a good headline, and that really again that opened that door, and then we had a little bit more funding, and then the avalanche from UK sport, and then it felt real. It was and year on year the athletes were producing and getting better, and all the way to the Sochi Games in 2014. But it was an amazing journey, really.
And that journey ended with a medal. So
it didn't.
True to your word.
Yeah, but it didn't though, did it? Because in true sort of I don't know, bobsleigh style, there was a bit of a crash along the way because I was there in Sochi, and it was as a spectacle. The amount of money they spent on it was phenomenal. It was like 4 times more than the 2012 London Olympics, and they never felt like they were underfunded. But so the 4-man was always our strongest event, in that it became our strongest event over that 4-year period with Jacko and the boys, and they were so close. But on after the 4 runs, because it's 4 runs that make up the competition, and we were 5th, and I thought, well, it felt like real success. I mean, but it was because it did, fifth, and we're, like I said, a non-alpine nation. It wasn't a medal, and I was sort of happy because, if we'd finished 12th or something like that, it'd be like, we felt like we'd let everybody down, but fifth, and we were so close to that third place for the medal, and actually pretty close to second. But then the doping stuff came out because we finished behind 2 Russian sleds, and we'd already. They have a long history of doping in sport. It's state sponsored. It's gone on for decades, right back to the 60s and 70s, because they place so much national pride and emphasis on doing well in sport. It means everything to them, to the point where they'll cross the line. And I remember back in my first race, one of my first races in my first season in 2007 for Britain was in St. Moritz, and we were in Switzerland, and it was a practice. You practice for a few days, and what you do, you've got there's an order of which you go in, and we're wheeling the sled along to get it in position, and we're right behind. There were 2 Russian athletes in front of us. And funny if it was Chris Woolley and I, the performance. He's an athlete at the time. We're pushing along, and I couldn't get over the shape of the athlete in front of me. Like, you have a good, well-built athlete, you think, great. And I said to him, I was like, Woolley, shape of this bloke in front of us. And he just looks at me, because he's a guy with all the sports knowledge, and he just goes, well, that's not normal. I said, I know it's not normal. Why don't I look like that? He said, because you eat food and drink water. Yeah, you don't use the other stuff, And I was like, what other stuff? And he goes, drugs. And I'm like, oh, right, okay. I was like, so naive. I said, they still do that? And they were like, yeah. And so that was 2000. So we're 2014, and we knew it, but we couldn't prove it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But then not long after, the investigation started, because the result, their doping results were unusual, as in so clean, and then the whistleblowing elements of Rodchenko when he came out, and then that led to the McLaren investigation, and the finding was just shocking. Like the FSB, which is the modern equivalent of the KGB, they were in there, so all the athletes were submitting clean samples, when they were clean, and then the FSB were in the doping labs during the games swapping the samples over.
Wow.
And I remember Dick Pound from WADA just saying, what possible interest would the Russian state have in an athlete's urine, and only a Russian athlete's urine, and that was shocking. And so then, we were then that kind of, well, actually, it looks like we've got every chance we might get a medal out of this, but it took 6 years, but we before the athletes. The Jacko and the boys got their medals, and for an athlete in bobsled, we're not like a Premier League footballer or a highly paid tennis player. They're in it for the medal. That's what they're there for. They receive a wage, but it's pretty low. I felt for them because they'd lost their moment. It was nice that they've now got their medals, and there was a great presentation at the British Olympic Ball, but it's not the same. And then actually for the sport, because I'd left after 2014, I'd done 8 years, and it was time for me to, I'd concentrate 100% on my career, and or just actually get some sleep. Actually, was more like to,
I love it.
But actually, it would have been nice to have left that legacy of a medal, because actually what would have happened then was we would have got better funding from UK sport as medal winners. We would have had, from a commercial opportunities point of view, a lot more, because we delivered on this. This was part one. We've gone from the scrap heap to Olympic medal winners. The next stage is we want to go from bronze to gold. That would have been my message if I'd stayed in the. But of course, we were fifth. So so we missed out on all those potential commercial opportunities, and actually pay back for all our guys like yourselves, who've been so important, so integral part of the journey. I say to everybody who helped us, you were another 1/10 of a second off each run. You were a material difference to where we were to where we got to. You can't just say, it's absolutely a part of that. So it would have been nice nice for you guys to have made something more of it, but then 6 years later, so we lost that moment. The athletes lost the moment. Everybody lost the moment. And then, after, post 2014, the sport has really been in decline, unfortunately. And, it's a shame, but it may have been, we may have been able to build something, a lasting, keep that momentum that we've spoken so much about, but we lost that, and it was a shame. But conversely, it's great that the truth came out.
Yeah,
the dope. It was another kick in the whatsits for the dopers, because and I remember chatting to athletes from other sports. Jason Gardner, who was a top sprinter, Olympic gold medal relay runner, we were talking about it, and he was saying, Tim Montgomery, who ended up in jail actually for all sorts of different misdemeanors, but he was briefly world record holder over 100 meters, but he'd got done for doping. And just chatting to Jason, and he goes, I'm glad he's in prison, and I hope he hates it in there, because he's taken so much from us as athletes, and myself and my family. He goes, this is how much extra prize money I would have won. These are how much bonuses I would have missed out, which meant I could have got better trainers, and I could have gone on and on. And it's there aren't any winners in it. Tim Montgomery's in jail. The Russians are banned from Olympic sport. We lost our moment, and he just said, what was the point? But the truth came out, and it was great. Seeing the boys up on stage. I mean, they're not as fit as they used to be, but it was great. It was wonderful. I wanted to have a good cry, to be honest, because it just felt amazing. But there's always that but in there. But yeah, I wish we could have delivered, or felt like we delivered at the time for you guys and all the other guys that helped us. But we got there in the end.
Hi, I'm Tom Green, Olympic champ from Tokyo, and if you want the best tasting protein bars on the market, you should try the new bodyscience Moose range. Greg, you better be testing these.
Mate, they're getting drug tested, got you covered. Just even looking at the business, the sport rankings, and enjoying the growth in that space with you, because you were an exceptionally good communicator of what was happening, where we're at, the performance gains, and we got a lot back from that, from development of our products too, from perspective of the amount of information you gave us back and training shots. I mean, unless people go back and look at the photos of what you do in training, you can't explain it to someone. It's like no other sport. It's incredible. Yeah. And the athletes that you had were like Jacko or John Jackson. Like when he got his medal, he reached out and contacted us and said thank you. You know what I mean? Like that's just
fantastic.
And he was an incredible human in himself. Like you pretty much were, hey Greg, look what we've done. Look, it's awesome. But to have the athlete come in as well and say that. It was a really good relationship for our brand's 23. So there's a good chunk of a third of that life was you guys, and we loved every minute of it. It was so much fun. I'm not sure the design team liked it at first because they didn't have a clue what they were doing, but from a perspective of where it all went and what it was and that relationship, it's something that we talk about all the time here, because it really is a massive part of our history, and I can't thank you enough for that. I'm so glad you reached out that day.
The pleasure's all mine, mate. It was fantastic, and and I think you remember you saying it's like, well, it's a bit like a concept car. We're going to build it and see what people think. But I'm glad you guys felt some benefit from it. It's so important to me personally that you guys got a lot out of it. Because it was an amazing time. It felt amazing, and it still does now. When we think back to it.
It was really funny, and I've told this story 1,000 times. You've probably heard it. We didn't have anything to test with. So, to make a garment for someone standing up versus someone in different positions. And like we watched a lot of videos on what happened to the athlete during that power speed moment into what happened during the, what do you call it when you go down a hill? What's that called? The ride, the run? The run?
The load. The load is getting into the sled. So it's the push start, load, and then do the run down.
So we spent a lot of time looking at that. All we had was, those handheld pallet jacks, the ones with the two big prongs and the handle? The number of times we went around the factory in that thing just getting low, getting high. And I've promised to send you the video. I've got to send it to you of Sheepy going around the factory in that, because I remember with the last prototype, we're like, we've got to test it before, because, they're not standing upright. They're not running athletes in the whole journey of where, start to finish. And the number of times that we got on that thing and just pushed that around was hilarious. And I'll have to send you the video Tokyo because it's something that...
No, I don't do it. But the other thing as well, I look at the evolution of the suit as well, and because Adidas are a big global company. Here are your race suits, right? That we're the same. We've been going for years. They're exactly so. They just look different for each nation. But then there was the things like, and I remember saying to you, well, look, one of the issues as a fella, just before the start of a race, you always need to go for a wee. Now the problem is that with all these Adidas race suits, they only go down to about your navel, your belly button. So you have to pull the whole thing down, and it's in a busy toilet, drags on the ground and all the rest of it. You want to be just thinking about the race. You don't want to be thinking about your race suit. Yep. Mopping up the toilet floor, and then you were like, okay, what about if we do? And you were like, well, can we do a longer zip down to the area that needs looking after, but do a double zip so we don't have to undo the O. So do it so you can just do the bit open
top
the
bottom
bit.
zip.
No, yeah, top bottom. And like, so then when that, it's amazing from an athlete's point of view. They were so happy. They were like, oh, great, we don't have to take the whole suit off. And then they were like, yeah, but the zip's metal. He said, when we're crouched over with our chin on the top, it's digging into our chin a little bit. So then the next one came over with these, much softer plastic zip. And they're like, oh, this is brilliant. But it's made just things like that. From an athlete's point of view, if you're listening and you're delivering, then they have to listen and deliver when it's their turn to be and it was just great. Those just those little differences. Now I look at the race and think, oh, it was so much easier. Because you always need that last minute one, and if you could just improve that, because you just want the athlete to be focusing on what you're supposed to be doing, not trying to shrug out of a race suit and all of that stuff. It's they call it. I remember before my first ever race for Great Britain in Innsbruck in 2007, my coach was a guy called Dean Ward, and he was an Olympic medal winner from the '98 games. And I've rocked up in town and thinking this is fantastic. And he comes into my room the night before and he goes, right, have you got your stuff ready for the morning? I said, oh no, I'll just do it in the morning. He goes, no. He goes, right, tomorrow I want you to focus on one thing and one thing only, which is, and I want you to go to bed thinking about one thing is, how many steps you're taking before you get into the sled, where you're going to sit down. This is your first race. You have no experience. And he said, when you get up in the morning, I don't want you to be thinking, where are my gloves or where are my running spikes? They all go into the bag tonight and they all packed and they're ready. And then tomorrow, you focus on one thing. And it's got to work. Everything, they call it decision fatigue now. Like athletes don't need that. Yep. And I do a bit of work with, I love my tennis, and obviously we just led on to doing the business I do now. But I work, I mentor a few of the younger up and coming tennis players, and I always go through that. Look, if you got all your stuff ready, are you ready? If you don't, food, you had your food at the right time. This has all got to be right if you're going to deliver, because you don't need to be thinking about anything else. So it was so those things. Even then, that just every little bit. It's the marginal aggregation of improved, gains, isn't it? That they talk about. And that was part of it, and maybe that was 100th on the run, maybe that was, and then when you add them all up, that's the difference between 8th and an Olympic medal.
Yeah, great journey, good story too. Good story.
Yeah.
So, mate, what are you up to now? Like you just mentioned, you're doing a little bit in tennis.
Yeah. So I worked. So my kind of career. I worked in London for 25 years, and the company that I joined straight out of university, I ended up being the owner of by the time I left, and we were. It's like the old Victor Kayam, isn't it? I liked it so much I bought the company. But so I joined there straight out of uni, and it was we were a Xerox dealer, so we just sold printers and in those days photocopiers. But we morphed into an IT company by the time I left, and I just worked my way through. It's good, great company, great people. It was really as a place to where my feet landed, because you don't know much when you leave uni, apart from how to have a good time. and you hope. I had a good feeling, that when I started, the two guys who ran it, they were young guys in those days, but great, really good examples of how to run a company. And so I was really lucky, and they were always, they were super good at allowing people to grow and do their best. Some people feel threatened by people who do well, and And so I was a door knocking salesman, in London in those days. And I loved it. I couldn't believe, I'm just walking around London and, knocking on doors and getting appointments and, to talk about printing. Firstly, I can't even believe, I looked about 12 in those days as well. Maybe if I was collecting for I don't know, for something. But anyway, so it was really good and I really enjoyed it. And I grew through it. So I became a director in 2005. And then, the guys who were owning, they were approaching their 60s and, were looking to sell the company. And so we did it for me and one of the other directors was similar age. I mean, we were, our late 30s then, on 40 actually I was, to effectively do a management buyout. And so I went from from a director to an owner or an employer. And that was great. But that was about 2012, 2013, which explains why I got to 2014. That I gave up the bobsleigh stuff because, it was all too much. Yeah, but I loved it. We grew the company. I mean, we were in English pounds, we were turning over about 13 or 14 million when we took it over. And then in 3 years, we turned that into a 20 million pound a year business. Wow, nice. It was great. It was still a small company, not big. We had about 55, 60 people. But I was approaching my mid 40s and, because so much of our revenue was generated by ink going onto paper or toner. My own feeling was I thought this technology's had its day, because we all print so much less now. And I thought, however we replace this, it will never make the same amount. But also I wanted to do something different. I was, 45. I thought if I stay much longer, I'll be too old to change, or it'll be much harder. So I sold up at the end of 2017, not knowing what I was going to do, because if you're so engaged in something on a day-to-day basis, you can't really look at unless something falls into your lap. So I thought, and also my kids were, at an age now, I was getting up at 5 a.m. I wasn't getting home till 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. I was commuting into London. I think I was just a bit burnt out, but it's never one thing, is it? That it was wanting to spend more time with my kids, and I really, the desire to do something else. And actually, funnily enough, I think if you've only ever worked in one place, which I had, although it was a vastly different company in 1994 to 2017, but it's like your own face. It doesn't seem any different because you see it every day. But I think actually the experience of working in bobsleigh, doing something different, it gave me the confidence to go, okay, maybe you should try something else. So I finished at the end of 2017. It was a very weird feeling. We shut the doors at Christmas and that was my last day on January the 3rd when everyone went back to work. And I'm so used to, I'm so busy all the time. I was like, what do I do now? I was like looking out the window, like the little lost dog waiting for his owner to return, and I was like, I don't know. So I thought, I used to play tennis as a kid and I really enjoyed it. So I went and joined the local tennis club, and a great place. I mean, again, I'm really lucky that suddenly you bump into a bunch of really, really good people, and they're a real progressive tennis club, in terms of, the numbers that they've achieved. They was originally belonged to the RAF, Royal Air Force, and they were pretty much on their knees at the turn of the century. And then the management team that came in have turned it around. It's got 6 indoor courts. It's, it's fantastic. We've had 10 players either go to junior Wimbledon or main draw Wimbledon in the last 10 years. And so we've got 30 kids into full scholarships in the States. It's a great place. And I thought, well, this is great. Tennis has moved on a bit. And then, I started playing a few matches, and there was like, where were all the other facilities? Because they were there, they got 6 indoor courts. There were none, literally none. And it was all like, this hasn't really moved on. So then I thought, why? And so then I started looking at it compared to, how do we compare to other nations? And we're so far behind. Like France, for instance. I mean, we have an indoor tennis court for every 42,000 people in the UK. They've got for every 7,000 people, right? So there's 6 times more. But also their weather's way better than ours. It rains all the time. You think we'd be perfect. So there, and then I thought, well, what are indoor courts made of? So then I just did I went all around the world looking at different technologies. So basically what we do now is we import, I settled on this company in Poland who do, if you look at the difference in wealth from what we have in tennis in the UK compared to Poland, but they've got all these great facilities. And it isn't just tennis, it's all sports. So it's multi-sport. We're doing a lot of work with cricket I mean, I even working on a project with British baseball and softball at the moment. Okay. It's multi-sport. It's all sorts. Tennis being the main market because it really benefits from indoor tennis. So basically what we do is we import their we send over all the architect's drawings and sizes, and then they make them, and then we import them over and install them. But they're primarily wood frame or steel frame with a double PVC exterior. So it's the most cost-effective way to create a year-round performance environment, or just a year-round environment where people can train. It's a well-established technology. I mean, it's very much like the air domes that we have had in the past, or they still exist, but with a frame to keep them up, because the cost of energy now to inflate an air dome is horrendous. And also from an environmental point of view, So it's quite mad. So I then did what I've always done: got busy, got on the phone, understood the business model. But the interesting thing is, I thought, well, I need to know everything about the construction, like what it's made of, because it's just not my industry, So, but it turns out actually that isn't the challenge for sport. They largely accept the fact it's a good product, and it is a really, really, really good product. But their challenge is, well, how do we fund this? Where's the money, to do this? We did a Sport England grant 8 years ago, and it took us weeks, and we weren't successful, and it was really hard. We don't know the process, and so then I thought, well, okay, let's find out where all the funding is. And there's pockets of money everywhere. Like, I didn't realize if you're near a landfill site, for instance, they have to provide money for the local community for community projects. So then you start finding, okay, right, so you're there's some landfill money there's some council money here, there's some lawn tennis association money. So then we'll go to a club and go, right, so indoor, and then also it's got to be in the right area, because if it's in a built up area, you'll never get it through planning. So, we're working on a few club relocations at the moment, about taking them out the town centre, putting houses where the sport area is to an area where they can build proper facilities, and using that money to do it. So and then they want to know, well, how do we run it? Like, we don't have any experience of running an indoor sense. So then we help them with a business plan. And it was great, obviously, at the tennis club I'm at, tapping into their knowledge about so we can help other clubs make that transition from a seasonal, because it really is a seasonal sport if you're an outdoor, because it rains, all year in the UK, and they have to be ready for the 4 days of sunshine that they get to be able to play. Everyone rushes to the courts to do it. So then it's really helping them find the money to do it, and then also help them make the transition, because they're the things that matter to them, and then doing good things. So I started that in 2019, and we started building up some good prospects. Then we lost 2 years to COVID, but so we're rocking and rolling now, and we got our first builds coming up in the next 12 months. They're just going through planning at the moment, and I think so it's all systems go, mate. I mean, and it's great. I used to have to wear a suit and go into London every day. Now I put on a tracksuit,
Awesome.
and just travel around the country talking to sport. I mean, I've been all over the place. I was in Scotland the other week, and just getting out there, and engaging with people, because that's the only way you can do it, and make them realise it's actually, and they'll go, actually, this is more achievable than we thought it was. It's more affordable than we thought it was, because there's this potential money available. So it's been brilliant. Actually, I've enjoyed every minute of it, and hopefully that will then now turn into something that is some buildings at the end of it. But the outlook's is great, mate. So no, it's all good.
You've got an amazing story, and we didn't even touch on, you used to race motorcycles before you started. That to a bobsled brakeman to a, well, let's just say sports entrepreneur, because that's what it sounds like. And I don't think you're ever retiring just quietly if you sit back and have a good look at yourself.
Well, I don't know.
The passion is there like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, but you just move forward, didn't you? I don't tend to look back. Weird things like, I picked up trophies along the way, doing the odd sport, but I don't know. And it's terrible, but I throw them away. I just think, well, that was done. That was, that doesn't matter now. It's where the next one was. But I have to say, just on the motorcycle in front, that was the least successful thing I've ever done. I loved it, and I did it for 8 years, and it was painful. I mean, but it'd be fair to say there was no beginning to my talents at motorcycle racing. But I got one race win in 187 races, and
it's not bad. had one from 187.
So yeah, one from 187, but 19 trips to the hospital.
Yeah,
so
I can imagine.
It's not quite the right ratio, but I loved it. It was great. Made some great mates, but yeah, no, there was definitely no beginning to my talents at that sport. But that was good,
mate. Just before we finish up, for those people,
yes.
for us Aussies out here, they're listening to this, and it's mainly a fitness market, mate. What's it like going down a bobsled track?
It's not what you expect,
okay.
Because I'd finished motorcycle racing and I finished motorcycling because my kids have been born, and it is pretty dangerous, and Mrs.
I get it.
I said, and I was ready to give up at that. To be fair, I was ready to give up anyway. I'd reached the bottom of where I was going to finish, and then I kind of had a year out just doing all the regular sports I've always done, like playing footy and, badminton and a few. But I'd always watched bobsleigh and thought, I could do that. Stupid, isn't it? I've seen the film, I've watched the Olympics. Because I was a good athlete, I was a 10-second 100-meter runner, and I was, in my mid-30s, I thought, I'll give it a go. So I went on to, through the magic of the internet, and it turned out they did like talent ID days, where you can try out. So obviously, to get through, obviously got selected, but then then we trained at Bath University, where they have a bobsleigh on wheels and a track so we learn how to get into the sled, and then we went out and trained on ice. There's an ice house in Italy, Cesana, where you learn to run on ice. It's the same as running not on ice, because the shoes are really good, but some people find it a bit confusing. I never found it was any different, so the equipment sorts that out. But then there's that thing where you're like, now we're actually going to do it, we're going to get into a sled. And we were in, so it was in, I remember, like I was crapping myself. I don't mind, because it's the unknown, isn't it? And so I remember, it was a 2-man, which is infinitely easier to get into than a 4-man, because you got the driver in the front and you get in through the back. It's the easiest load. The side loads are much more complicated than a 4-man. There's only 2 of you, so I remember running along, pushing and jumping and getting in. And then it was like, the thing is, the bobsleigh tracks are built on concrete base, and then they're artificially frozen. Mm-hmm. But there are expansion gaps, every few meters to allow for, temperature expansion, because it's very hot. And say, for example, in Italy, it's 35 degrees in the summer, but it's freezing in the winter. So they have to be able to do it. But even those expansion gaps creates like a bump as you're going along. And you get in and you've got your head between your legs, which is probably not the best place to be in your first run down. And so it's the noise. It's just like it's like galloping horses, like a whole load. It's like, and you're like, oh my god, yeah. Like it's not smooth at all. It's pretty, but apart from San Moritz, which is smooth because that's a natural track. It's built out. It's compacted snow rather than a concrete base. Yeah. And then the G-force, you're like, whoa. And the thing is, it builds and it builds and it builds, because you just keep getting faster. So first bit, you think, it's the noise, the noise inside. And you're inside like a tube, really, aren't you? And you're inside a tube. So this noise, you're like, what? And then you start to build speed. Then you hit your first big G-force turn, because you're going up right. And it's like knocks it out of you. Like it's like one of the corners in Germany is 8G. That's 8 times your body weight pushing down on you. And when your head's right next to your goolies and you've got 8G pushing down, it's you've got to push back, because and also suddenly that you'll jump from one side to the next, because you might be going through 2 or 3 quick corners. And then I realised I'm going down this track and I go, I don't know which way the course goes. And that's one of the things you learn, because suddenly you're being slammed, so your head's being bashed on one side of the sled, and then it's the other, and then you've got this noise, then you've got this G-force, and then, so it's my first run down. On the penultimate corner, we crashed.
Ooh.
And so we were first run down, and because one of the things I thought about goes, I'll do this because it's a bit safer than motorcycle racing. And the next thing I know, I'm bouncing along the track down my ice and goes, this is the same, this is no better, and I remember, and the driver was John Hillman. He goes, I'm really sorry, mate. And I'm like, all right, fine. Yeah. And then I was like, then I had the buzz just hit me, and I was like, this absolutely absolutely brilliant. Like, I mean, I got such a high from it. When are we going again? It goes, yeah, we're about a couple of hours. But some people hate it. Like, you know, some people have gone through the whole training thing. They love the idea of it. They've done one rundown and gone, right, that's it. I'm not getting it. We're not getting back in. You know, nothing on earth will make me do it. I mean, I really enjoy it. And not a lot of people love it. I mean, but I remember we did, Jeremy Clarkson from Top Gear in the Grand Tour. He came out to do, he was doing some Christmas video about, extreme sports, and the filming company were like, you know, we need you to do 4 runs down so we can get all the right shots. I remember and he did one run down, he gets out, he goes, I'm not getting back in that contraption for any amount of money, just use the stuff that you've got, and walked off. And I thought, well, fair enough. So some people love it, but it isn't what you think. You know, it's not what you say. It's pretty, there's all sorts of noise, there's G-force, there's, you know, it's pretty, pretty wild, I think. The road. I mean, I'd like to love it. I mean, any chance if I could do it again, I would. But it was, but it's not for everybody.
It's one of the big bucket list things we miss. I remember you were having a sponsors day, and you said, I wish you guys could come over and come and have a go. And back then it was a different business, so it was no. But it's one of those things when we all get together, we go, oh fuck, I wish we actually got in the plane and
we can still do it, mate. We can still make it happen.
Yeah, well, if we're over there, I'll give you a little tap on the shoulder, see how we go.
Mate, anytime you're over, mate, we'll sort it out, mate. Don't you worry about that.
You're a legend. It's so good to chat, mate. Thank you so much for coming on board and sharing your story. It was, like I said, it was one of the great things we've done here at Body Science, and there's been a lot of them, and I'm really thankful for the relationship that was created over that time, and I wish you all the best in your Holton Sports Structures. You know, that sounds like it's something really cool. And yeah,
mate, thanks so much. And, you know, like I said, what you did for us, you know, I can never say thank you enough. You know, you were part of that journey from nowhere to medal. So no, the thanks is all mine, matey, honestly.
No, I appreciate it. And stay in touch.
Yeah, okay, buddy.
Hey, no mate, worries. Thanks heaps. You're a legend.
Take it easy, mate. See you, buddy.